This is important that people wake up. Silver is an opportunity of a generation, of a lifetime. And I mean that to my soul. It is. There is nothing that is more undervalued and more overutilized and decreasing in supply, both above ground and geologically. You could not, on a piece of paper, write down greater fundamentals for an investment,
Right.
ever. And you add into it the seriousness of what's happening as a nation and the prospects of where we end up. Man, I'm telling you, you're doing, this is going to sound weird, but I mean it. You're doing God's work. You are. I mean, whether you know it or not, you are helping more people protect themselves and get out of the way of what's coming than most people much older than you and with a much greater platform than you, like Jim Cramer, who all he's doing is destroying people's wealth, telling people to buy Silicon Valley Bank stock at $300 a share. So, sometimes the worm turns. It hasn't fully turned yet, but people like you and I, when this is all said and done, will be revered for sounding the alarm, the Paul Revere, if you will.
Yeah.
And I admire you for it, and I admire myself for it, because neither of us need to do what we are doing and being so public about our opinions. And I just think I hope we're making an impact even a little bit, because
Yeah.
in my entire career, almost 34 years, I have never been so concerned, so frightened, and so sad about what I see bearing down upon us. And that's the honest to God truth.
That's the, I think, most interesting thing about this is like when I met you, coming on my channel, talking about the bricks and stuff. And it seems like right around that time is when everything just ramped up tenfold. I don't know if it was just because that's right when I got introduced to all this, but it seems like I've known you for what, like 6, 7 months. It seems like since then, everything has just come crashing down.
Faster, faster, faster,
Yeah,
faster. It's what toilet paper I'm talking about. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And the crazy thing about it, when you go to the grocery store or when you call your oldest buddies, maybe they watch your show, but the ones that don't, ask them, do you know what the bricks are? No one does. And if it weren't for you, none of them know a silver eagle if it fell on their foot either.
Yeah.
So this country, albeit is waking up little by little, is very woefully underprepared for what's coming. And that's the most frightening thing about it, is that you and I speak to what is the pimple on the elephant's ass. And the elephant is whistling Dixie, worrying about the former President Trump being indicted, which is atrocious to me.
Right.
The fact that that happened, that's worthy of consideration, but it's far less important than what is really coming down. It's just another symptom of the sickness.
And he explained it in his speech. He explained what the state of America. He said we're about to be a third world country. He's like
we meddle with the elections. This is meddling, whether you believe it or not. When you indict on bullshit counts the leading Republican candidate because you do not want him ruining the apple cart.
Right.
That's meddling, and it's disgusting when you weaponize the Justice Department and the FBI and raid a former president's home at 5 a.m, yet don't do anything about the president and his son and the myriad of things that would deem indictment or digging. And it's very frightening. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary that this is happening in the United States. This is all emblematic of what is fostering the de-dollarization, the move away from the West. That isn't what it stood for. We're being hollowed out. We are not the country we once were, at least in this administration, we're not. And people can say what they want about Trump. His policies were 1,000 times better than any president I've ever witnessed. Yeah, he spoke like an idiot. So what? I'll take buffoonism way more than I will an administration that is eviscerating the value of the dollar, destroying our relationships with, look at these countries that are our allies. Saudi Arabia, gone. Mexico, gone. Germany, pissed off at us as can be because of the pipeline and the energy situation. France doing deals with China in yuan and signing 51-point deals, including military engagement. Australia, New Zealand, and Japan rumored to be contemplating joining the BRICS, the world is angry at us.
Yeah.
And hopefully not at us American people, but of the administration. And that is creating a very scary environment
Yeah.
where you need to think about what happens when the dollar gets dumped. But if you're going to dump dollars and you're going to stop taking it for oil the way Libya and Iraq did, and you know what happened to their leaders, well, you better get your ass covered first, and that's being protected by Russia and now by extension the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They got their back covered, and at some point when they are ready to release that statement on a Sunday night, just like Silicon Valley Bank Monday morning, everything was upside down. They'll do it on a Sunday night. Hey, thanks for the memories. We're moving on. We're taking another currency. Bang, all the dollars get dumped globally and they collapse. And the ramifications
Trump's
of that is something no one has thought about.
it
And when that happens, it's a religious experience.
Trump said that in his speech. It like specifically said that. And I guarantee 95% of people that heard that, it went straight over their head, just thinking it's all BS. But I did want to ask something, because we're talking about all these other countries. What's left of the G7?
Well, you got us in Canada. I mean, that's and the United Kingdom. Japan is talking about
They
joining
switched.
they haven't fully switched, but they're talking about it.
Yeah,
You got Australia, they're talking about it.
right. So we only, oh my,
I mean, a lot of the seven is disappearing.
yeah. So it's just
Yeah.
Canada, basically.
Well, I mean, and I guess Switzerland. I mean, you got countries in there, but it'll be a smattering of countries
Yeah,
that will be left isolated to what will be an entirely new ecosystem.
do you think Trump?
One that is all about transparency, a la blockchain, and commodities that are pegged to the blockchain.
Do you think if Trump did get back in office, he could fix this?
I think he'd have a better chance of fixing it than anyone because he would do the things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
And when he was in office, we had good relationships with North Korea. We had good relationships with China. Granted, there were sanctions and or not sanctions, tariffs. They were dealing with them appropriately. They respected us. We had good relationship with Russia. We did what needed to be done to put America first. We were energy independent. We had low inflation and high employment. Stock market was doing well. Look, you could argue we're so far down the rabbit hole that this is really beyond repair.
Yeah, that's
the U.S. government came out with their balance sheet a few weeks ago, 2022. Social Security is $77 trillion filled with IOUs, 77 trillion by their own admission, 76.9 or something like that. I always like the number a trillion seconds ago being 31,688 years ago. When you add that unfunded liability of 77 trillion to the other unfunded liabilities, unfunded off balance sheet obligations, Medicare, Medicaid, government, military pensions, you're $120 trillion on top of a $31 trillion debt. They came out and told us that the largest asset of the land of the free and the home of the brave is student debt. And you could argue that we're so far down the rabbit hole economically, financially, there may not be a solution but a reset. But what Trump did was demand respect and accountability, which is lacking right now in this country. And that's a scary thing. I think Trump may have been tough, but I think we were respected. And now we are not respected at all, which is, again, only giving courage to these entities to expedite, if you will, the formation of this massive union of countries that represent the majority of human population, to get it finalized before the administration changes. So unfortunately, I don't think that there's really any way to fix the problem that we have, only to mitigate the severity of the fallout.
Yeah, I always tell people that too. There's no solution to this problem. There's an alternative, which is precious metals, but Yeah, we're too deep in the hole. I mean,
You know what, man? The truth of it is this, and I think this is the most important thing I could say on this show. In what is coming, which I believe will be a hyperinflationary stagflation, the Great Depression meets the printing press. That is what I think is coming.
mm,
He or she who loses least wins. Get out of the way of what's coming. Get out of debt if you can, especially variable rate debt. Prepare food, water, protection for your family, things that you would need if a hurricane was coming. Buy a few ounces of silver or as much as you can every few weeks. Do what you can to prepare as if a hurricane is coming. And this is going to be a hell of a hurricane, in my opinion. And that's all that you can really do.
yeah,
And if you have greater means financially, then get the hell out of the dollar, get out of traditional assets. Because when rates spike in relation to that event, those assets collapse. That's the reset. That is
yeah.
the reset. And I think we're growing closer to the inevitability of that happening than ever, ever, ever before.
I want to look. I want to stick with Texas and all these states that are going, trying to bring back the gold standard. I think that's very interesting, and I want to see how that plays out. I don't see how that's possible, especially you said they're thinking about making a digital currency with
Well,
it.
how is it that Colorado and California and all these states are allowed to sell marijuana when it's federally illegal?
That's true.
The states make their own rules,
Yeah,
and despite the Fed, and this is another example of it. The states will have their own forms of legal tender.
that's
It's not like
interesting.
they're outlawing the dollar, and I don't know how the federal government will feel about it, but they're
Yeah,
doing it. And it's being passed. I mean, in Missouri and Wyoming and Texas and Idaho and
yeah,
Kansas,
that's crazy.
it's on happening. So, what to me, what that symbolizes more than anything is the awakening,
Yeah,
where the representative from Idaho stands on the legislature floor and says, we need to let our constituents do what the central banks are doing. They're selling dollars and buying metal. I mean, when have you ever heard that before? Representative Mooney from,
right. Robert Mooney.
yeah, who keeps trying to introduce gold and silver as legal tender and no taxes on gains and all of that stuff. There is an awakening,
Yeah,
and that's what it will take to, if we have any hope of digging ourselves out. There was a report issued by the International Monetary Fund a month or two ago that was titled "Gold, a gold and international reserve currency, a barbarous relic no more?" Question mark. The IMF is 150 countries where it's kind of like the Western form of the BRICS, so to speak. Not really, but kind of. This was formed at Bretton Woods, and the U.S. has veto power there. I think they control like 17 or 20%. But maybe that's how they fight back against the massive shift out of the dollar, as they issue a gold-backed digital Fed token or a digital dollar. I'm not exactly sure how it plays out, but
yeah.
I do think that that's on the table.